Thank you for coming out here on Monday morning. I am excited to introduce what I'm going to say is going to be the best panel at ETS. As the first panel, we will get to briefly hold that title, at least for a little while. But I'm really glad to be here. When I went to my first ETS conference, it was 10 years ago, the second one, I had to kind of sneak out of the office so people didn't know that I was going to go to some weird innovation group. And it's so excited today now to see this become much more mainstream. So I'm going to introduce our panel here. The first thing I want to say, though, is the reason you're here is the same reason they're here. The future of energy is not going to be decided today in Davos or Aspen or Washington, D.C. or Paris or even in Austin. The future of energy is going to get decided here at Energy Thought Summit ETS 2025 in San Antonio. So the first panelist I want to bring up here is Brian Hannigan. Brian is the president and CEO of Holy Cross Energy. He's one of the most visionary CEOs out there in this space. Holy Cross Energy is a member-owned electric cooperative with 45,000 members. They are doing amazing work across not only clean energy, but making it reliable and cost-effective. They've used AI in AI-enabled DER management systems, machine learning behind the meters, high renewable supply, collaboration, and really, really setting the tone for a lot of very exciting stuff we're going to talk about today. Next panelist I'd like to introduce is Mandeep Samra. She's CEO and general manager of Burbank Water and Power, also an extremely innovative utility CEO. She has fast-tracked Burbank to zero carbon by 2040, and she is running California's first municipal utility to roll out a long-duration iron flow battery and showing that it can be done. And that is so exciting when you think about the potential to really keep people safe and engage batteries on the grid. So Mandeep, thank you for joining us. You can grab a seat and then we'll get started with our questions in a moment here. John Thomas, who is Vice President of Product Management and Product Strategy at ESS. John, before this, has an amazing career in the auto industry. He was the first head of the Model S program at Tesla, and now he is innovating in the energy space. And ESS is doing some really fantastic work, again, in the area of iron flow long-duration batteries, which have some serious interesting advantages over lithium-ion. And so they're really doing some awesome stuff and a lot of AI connection in there as well. Also one of the very few battery companies anywhere that takes an American manufacturing approach. And then finally, Mike Parton. So Mike is not only a utility CEO at Sequatchie Valley Energy Cooperative, but he is also president of NRECA, the National Rural Electric Cooperatives Association. Now, if you are not familiar with rural electric cooperatives, let me be the one to share with you that they are a hotbed of innovation. We've all heard that phrase, necessity is the mother of invention. Notice nobody says abundance, giant budgets, and huge R&D is the mother of invention, right? So there's a lot of folks out in some crazy far-off places that are doing some really neat things in areas like solar, like fiber, like AI. But they're also doing really neat things when it comes to workforce and community engagement. And I think a lot of the things, and all of our panelists today are going to talk, they're going to talk about tech and policy and operations, but I bet you each one of them will also talk about culture, because that's a really important part of any of these innovations we're going to change. Now, if you haven't seen or read Edmund Morris's recent biography on Thomas Edison, I would recommend it. And the reason I'd recommend it is not because it's about Edison himself. What I was shocked about, and it really brought me back, was that innovation, invention, risk-taking is in our DNA as an industry, right? When you think of Edison and Tesla, as you heard about, and Westinghouse, right? People were doing crazy things, trying to build an industry from scratch that everyone thought was impossible, that everyone thought couldn't be done. Now, somewhere along the way, some of us in the industry kind of lost our way. We became over-optimized. We sort of started doing it the way it's always been done. But you're here because you're not those types of people, right? So those genes are out there in your organization's DNA. Maybe we forgot them, maybe they're not activated right now, but it's there. And all we need to do is find a way to activate it. And the people here up on this panel are the ones who are doing this. So I'm going to sit down and join them, but I'm going to give our first question here to Brian at Holy Cross Energy. Now, you've talked about reimagining the utility customer compact. That sounds interesting. Tell us a little bit about what that means to you.
Well, let's see if we get this thing on here. All right. Thank you, John, and good morning, ETS. Oh, come on. We can do that a little bit better. Good morning, ETS. That's more like it. Thank you for being here today and through the rest of the week. This is always one of my favorite conferences on the calendar. You know, Jason introduced the word ethos, and I kind of had to look it up because it had been a while since I'd taken Greek. But it comes from the word for character, the Greek word for character or integrity or trust. And when I think about redefining the utility, I think about my own experience as a utility customer, and I think about my own experience as now a CEO of an electric cooperative in the mountains of western Colorado, where I'm interacting with our customers every day. And the one thing that defines what I think a redefined utility relationship should be is one based on character, integrity, and trust, or based on ethos. So the theme of the conference is very much appropriate for what we're doing today. Holy Cross is one of a few utilities in the country, a very select few, that has set forth a goal of achieving 100% clean energy in its power supply by the end of this decade, by 2030. And as of today, I can report we're a little bit under 85% of the way there, year-to-date 2025. So we've got a little bit less than 85% carbon-free in the portfolio. But here's where the integrity and the trust comes in. Because what I like to say, kind of in a nutshell, is no one cares how clean the power is if it's not available to them, if we don't have reliability of service. No one cares how clean the power is if they can't pay their monthly electric bill, affordability. And particularly in our portion of the West, no one cares how clean the power is if it's starting wildfires or hurting people, either the customers or the employees themselves. Safety. So for us, a redefined relationship is really an addition, not a replacement of the historic compact that we've always had with our customers since 1939 when we were founded. Safe, affordable, and reliable, but now increasingly sustainable in a way that doesn't really force you to sacrifice any of the three to get the fourth, right? And that if you're for clean power, it's in there. If you like low rates at 11 cents retail, we got those too. Our reliability has been improving by 30% in reduction of outage minutes over the last decade, and we are working more safely than ever before with zero lost time incidents now for over a year and a year and a half, actually. So we're hopeful that our example can be one way that folks can take inspiration and see how kind of the integrity of doing what we've always done as utilities can be now expanded to a growing number of customer concerns around the sustainability of that power supply.
Awesome. Thank you, Brian. And, you know, when we think about, any of you who've managed projects, John and I were talking about this before, have heard the whole, there's an iron triangle of project management: faster, better, cheaper, pick two. You know, you can't have it all. Well, we sometimes fall into that mindset. Well, there's clean, there's reliable, there's cost effective. You can't have it all. Maybe you can. Maybe it's not an either or. Maybe the best utilities are the ones that do the best at all three of those, and you're a great example of doing that. Next question, I want to go to Mandeep, and there's so many questions I have for all of you. I want to make sure we have a chance for your questions too. So the way you'll trigger me if you have a question is pop up to that microphone. But first thing I want to ask you is talk to me about the long duration batteries, because as a Texan, so I live in Austin, We've had a very robust discussion in the legislature today about grid-scale batteries driven by the danger of lithium. And so I'm interested to hear about alternative technologies. So tell me about what you've done there.
Great. First, thank you for having me here today. It's good to be here. So we actually are very fortunate in Burbank, which we have like Disney, Warner Brothers, Nickelodeon, we're media capital of the world. We don't have a lot of space. So our utility actually has 10 acres of an eco-campus, so we actually have space to test out technologies. When I came here to Burbank 4 years ago, I came as Power Resources Manager. And when I came in, the team was looking at lithium ion and other types of short duration batteries. I told them to scrap that. I go, we need to look at long duration. We need to look at something that we could test out for the future, not something that's already been tested. So shortly thereafter, I became head of power supply, and we started to work with American Public Power Association to look for grants. And then we also reached out to entities across the western United States to see what kind of technologies actually worked. The only one that kept coming up was ESS, and ESS is here to talk to. So we partnered with ESS for a 75 kilowatt long duration battery, which is capable of going up to about 400 kilowatt hours daily. What we have is a 265 solar array on our campus. It's connected directly to that. We were not maximizing that. It was actually just running and we weren't using it. So now we're actually able to harness that energy. Secondly, one of the most difficult parts of this, I think, was the contract piece. Our fire department did not know how to deal with the permitting. Our community development group did not know how to deal with the permitting. So we actually worked with them to highlight that there is no fire risk. It's really just plug and play. And it's materials predominantly found in abundance. It's not lithium where you have to go and mine it. It's materials found in abundance. And it was built predominantly in the US. Our APPA grant paid for the entire cost of the battery. The costly part was figuring out how to install it, how to link it, but once we figured that out, we actually shared it with other utilities in the state so they don't have to go through what we went through. It was a year-long process, not because of ESS. It was a year-long process because it's California, and that's what it takes to get something in the ground with permitting and everything else like that. But we're very fortunate that we have this eco-campus. I did not want to put other types of batteries there that could potentially catch on fire because we're next to the 5 freeway. And the 5 freeway is a big freeway in California that goes all the way up to Washington State, I believe. And then it's also next to a Metrolink, and we're also right across from Nickelodeon. So they did not want us to install anything that could potentially catch on fire. So we did a lot of research. We worked closely with the vendor, ESS, and actually we've been very happy. We have key account meetings with a lot of our large vendors. They come, they look at it, and they ask, oh, can we install one of these too? That's the exception. We would allow customers to install something like that. We do not allow customers to install anything like fuel cells that have natural gas. So this one doesn't have a greenhouse gas component, so they can install it, and we're just a really good test case. Thank you.
Thank you, Mandeep. Fantastic. And I'm going to go next to John Thomas for a question. Now, I mentioned that John had been the first head of Tesla's Model S program. He had a long and distinguished career in the auto industry. Now, when there's a good investment strategy, which is if Warren Buffett decides to start investing in something, you should too. Now, if John Thomas decides to switch industries to do something really interesting and transformative, you might want to invest in that too. So John, tell us, first off, why did you switch to do batteries in the utility industry? And then tell us a little bit more about this iron flow battery kind of concept.
Testing. Is this on? Okay. Hi. I left the traditional automotive industry and moved into Tesla Motors way back in 2006 as I wanted to be on the right side of history. And it just took one test drive in a Roadster to realize the entire world was going to change. We were truly going to achieve transforming electric vehicles, as Martin Eberhard used to say, from punishment vehicles into aspirational vehicles. But then we turned our sights to charging systems and went, ooh, how are we going to do that? In residential homes at one power level, maybe higher power, but ultimately DC fast charging was, the nirvana we were after to try to get the same electric fill-up time as it took at a gas station to have petroleum fill-up time. And we never quite achieved it, but got pretty darn close. But then you start going, where are those electrons coming from? We don't want to just burn more coal and fossil fuels and defeat the whole purpose of an electric vehicle. So my sights progressively switched from those early years totally into renewable energy and energy storage. And again, everyone's familiar with the duck curve, and as renewable penetration increases, and it is everywhere, and that I think a fantastic thing, you have to capture. So you need longer and longer duration storage to take advantage of those opportunities, whether it's wind, solar, or other means. And that's where I've been an observer and fan of flow batteries ever since like 2010, and always looking at vanadium and saying, wow, imagine a world where you can completely decouple power from energy, and you can have your energy storage device the size of an Olympic swimming pool, and you can provide 1 week of power. Imagine that. And it's actually happening in China, in Dalian province. So it's not the most cost-effective solution, vanadium, due to the scarcity and volatility of materials. And that, in part, is why I had my eye on ESS and iron flow. And the earth-abundant materials just made total sense to me. And so I've studied, worked with Department of Energy labs and headquarters, and learned a lot about varieties of iron flow. There's actually different families: pure flow, hybrid, which we are, and other types. And so I came there kind of invited and had to interview with the board to try to say what I would do with the technology, because they were kind of struggling. They were at a 10 or 12-year startup phase. And if you haven't broken through at that point, people might be saying, So, and what I found is we were constrained by containerized solutions. We were looking to try to be similar to lithium-ion batteries and other nickel metal hydride back in the day, and trying to say, oh boy, we can ship in an ISO 40-foot container. But we are just significantly less favorable from power density and energy density than lithium. And so why pretend to be that? And so I said, imagine a world with no walls and no roof. What could we do if we could just pack our stuff as densely as possible and just see how big we could ship? What quanta could we ship in? And working with Honeywell, our strategic investor, who's committed to modularity, and they'll put up $500 million chemical plants in 3 months just by shipping modules and stacking them together like Lego blocks. And we said, hey, let's do that. And Shazam, there we are. And we launched our energy-based product at InterSolar a few months ago. And we're kind of having explosive attraction in the marketplace.
Awesome.
But not the kind like lithium. It's the kind that can self-extinguish,
I've been trying in meetings and panels about batteries to avoid things like this is blowing up in the market and so on for that reason. So good point. So I want to go next to Mike Parton, but if you're not familiar with NRECA, the National Rural Electric Cooperative Association, I'm going to give you this plug. So we're all busy, right? I've got a consulting firm. I run an association for electric grid cybersecurity, and I love all the sources of information that are out there, from DOE to the national labs to you name it, private, public research institutes. On a really busy week where I don't have time to keep up with everybody, I check what the NRECA is saying to do. So even if you're not an electric cooperative, you don't have to be, the thought leadership that's coming out of that organization is fantastic. If you imagine a Venn diagram where one circle is people who have vision and the other circle is people who execute, there's not a lot of overlap between those Venn diagrams. NRECA is definitely in that place of overlap. So Mike, tell us a little bit about, first off, just that spirit of innovation. In some of your work, you've talked about co-ops being at this kind of exciting inflection point. Why do you personally want to push innovation in that space?
Yeah, thank you very much. And certainly, it's a pleasure to be here with this group of thought innovators. I want to touch on something before I get to that just for a moment that John said. He said this 2 or 3 times, and he said, just imagine that. And I think that's what this group is all about. Just imagine that. And for us as electric cooperatives, and there's 900 electric co-ops around the country, We serve about 60% of the land mass of the United States, 42 million consumers. We talk about that a lot in Arlington at our headquarters. Just imagine that. In these times that we're living in, especially inside the Beltway in D.C., those of us that are innovators and those of us that have that mindset of just imagine that, these are tough times, to say the least. But those of us that really believe in moving our utilities forward, we believe in, and we've said this throughout our 90-year history, in that affordability, reliability, those are the bedrocks of what we do. But we started with nothing in rural America. And so we have always been, for 90 years, innovators, looking for the next thing. What will be the drivers of those innovative ideas? And at our ECA, we really try to do that for our members. We have members that serve 2 customers a mile, all the way up to folks that are very dense around metropolitan areas around the country. There's a lot of different needs out there. And for NRECA, what we try to do is be the facilitator of that movement. Some of those small utilities, they don't have the staff to focus on what's on the horizon. And so that's what we do at NRECA. Brian is on a panel that we have, a strategic panel. And the way we do as much as we do, we have member advisory groups, strategic advisory groups, where we're bringing in members from all around the country, and we're thinking and we're talking and we're implementing those across the nation. That's the way that we move the ball forward and down the court. I can think of no better time to be in this industry than right now. You know, you just think about in your career, how much innovation has changed, how much technology has changed just in your career. And just think what's on the horizon for us. But it's going to take folks like you all that are in the room to keep talking about innovation. We can't be satisfied with good is good enough. It's not going to work. Could we? Yes, probably back in the 60s and 70s and early parts of this industry. You know, I remember my engineers talking about when they were in school, and their professors would say, you don't need to go into power engineering because everything in that industry has already been done. And boy, that was proven wrong. So it's a pleasure to be here with you. I look forward to the conversations this week.
Awesome. Thank you, Mike. We'll come back to Brian here, and we'll switch a little into not only into the technology side, but the intersection kind of between technology and culture. So Brian and his team have done some pretty innovative stuff. I mean, I mentioned in the intro, artificial intelligence for DER management is just one, right? So people are talking about what's the role of AI and energy. They're doing it, right? So they're applying these really innovative technologies. If you look at it just on the tech side, they're doing super cool stuff. But talk to me about both the super cool stuff you're doing and the culture that enables that at the same time.
You know, I want to pick up on where Mike left off, because there is a ton of innovation, obviously, in the technology space. We've seen a lot of innovation in the policy space. Some of that's a little windshield wipery. One way one time, one way another. We've seen a lot of innovation in markets with organized wholesale markets and retail markets and competitive spaces and third-party aggregators and all the things. But the biggest need for innovation, and the thing that I've really enjoyed working on so much at Holy Cross, is the innovation in our company cultures. The power system engineer professor years ago was lecturing about a power system that was defined by large plant, one-way transmission and distribution on the delivery side, and a passive customer who really didn't interact with you unless the lights were out or the bill was high. And I think if all of us reflect on how we interact with our energy, to love our energy, as Jason said in the hashtag, we're much more engaged with it now, whether we like it or not. If someone doesn't like the quality of the service that I provide as one of Mike's 900 co-op members, they can march their butt down to the Home Depot or to the Lowe's and meet with somebody that'll get them a solar panel and a battery system and a smart heat pump and a refrigerator and all the things. And so as we look at the reality that we're not the only game in town anymore, that consumers do have choice, even if we're not in a competitive market, we've really had to rethink our culture to be much more customer-centric. At Holy Cross, I like to say, let's give our members, because they're members of the cooperative, let's give our members what they want before somebody else does, right? And I'm sure if John and Peter are here from Rappahannock and they've got 4 gigs of data centers on final approach to their service territory, they're thinking the same thing. Let's give our customers what they want, whether my ski areas, their data centers, you know, the mom and pop farms all throughout our country. We really have to rethink our culture to be more customer centric, and that means solving the problems that are in front of you and managing our teams in ways that give our employees agency, being open to embracing new tools like artificial intelligence, not just for DER management, but for us, wildfire is a huge issue. So we're now flying drones and using satellite data and using AI to process that mound of massive amounts of stuff to help us optimize where to send our tree crews, to go cut the trees that are the biggest risk to the system in terms of both reliability and starting wildfire. We're spending the same amount, but we're getting a heck of a lot more done. And that passes through to more affordability, more reliability, the things that really drive our social license to start talking about all the other stuff. Whether it's how do we get you a behind-the-meter battery is one of our programs, how do we put you in an electric vehicle, how do we help you help us keep the system more reliable with your DER investments that you're going to make anyway. It's really a different mindset, and while it may be more front and center when you're a smaller electric cooperative and you have that opportunity for engagement, I think it's probably the same thing throughout the world of public power, and as you heard from Lawrence, the same thing if you're in an investor-owned utility as well. I think this cultural innovation that we need is like the thing that's going to hold us back if we don't get it right across all of our entire industry.
Awesome. Thank you, Brian. So one of the things, you know, we're blessed here to have CEOs and top executives on this panel, but one of the things that any of us can do, any of you can do, regardless of your role, even if you're not the person who runs the utility, even if you're not the person who determines the culture, is to listen to your customers, to really listen to them, not just to appoint someone who has a public meeting that everybody goes to and nobody takes notes for, and we just ignore and build whatever we're going to build anyway. I'm sure those people aren't in the room, so I'm not worried about offending you by saying that. Now, Mandeep, I want to go to next. So she actually sets up and has coffee with ratepayers, with customers, with people inside the company and outside the company to listen, right? Well, what we hear as CEOs are supposed to be master and commander, right? Making or giving orders on the bridge. Why do you go listen and talk to your customers over coffee?
Thank you. So I will say, like, I'm probably the epitome of the GMs or CEOs that Burbank had in the past. I'm the opposite. I actually was surprised I got this job. They call me the Energizer Bunny. I'm like going to a conference like today. I leave at 2. I have a meeting at 6 p.m. with customers. So I'm trying to get back so I could have those meetings. But there's a lot that we have to do in California, right? It's really hard to build things. Everything's really expensive. A lot of people want to live in the LA area. Burbank has all the studios. I need to build a bridge that wasn't there. So the likes of Warner Brothers, Nickelodeon, Netflix, Disney, they're all there. These are customers I have to appease, but I also have to appease the ones that are the loudest. That's the multifamily, someone living in an apartment, that's who comes to my city council. So with these coffee chats, I also do appetizers as well. I've done about 12 of those. In the last 2 weeks, I've done 6. So it's because we have rates going up. I've done town hall meetings. No other utility in California is doing town hall meetings to talk about why rates are going up. And we don't talk about rate increases. We talk about rate adjustments and why. I feel like I need to look people in the eye and let them know why. It is difficult being a younger GM and not looking like or being like the rest. I am not an engineer. I've never been an engineer. When you start talking about high voltage, low voltage, I really don't care. I mean, I care, but that's really not my expertise. I have people that have that expertise. I'm a mathematician, I'm an economist, and I have masters in urban planning. That is my background. My background is also people, so I like to connect with people. I like to be out there. I go to almost every single community event that Burbank has. I was there Saturday night. I probably give about 80 to 90 hours a week to this city. I'm also going to do a caveat. I have 2 little kids. When I go home, they go, Mom, you're never home. I take them to my events. I'm going to DC for a fly-in. I'm taking both my kids. I'm going to a national conference in June. I'm taking both my kids. They will be in the audience when I talk. But it's really important for them to understand that I'm out there because I'm trying to build trust. We didn't have this in Burbank before. People didn't meet the CEO, even my team. They would tell me I didn't even know who the previous CEO was. I didn't know who the person was before that. You're out there. I spend an hour and a half every week meeting with my team, and I call them my team, not my staff, not my employees. We are all on the same team. From the person that gets paid the lowest an intern, that was me 20 years ago, to me sitting in a giant office. I've even asked them to shrink my office and make another space so other people can sit there. I care more about being there than sitting at my desk. I get my stuff done. I don't sleep. I come home. I could do my emails then. But I think it's very important to engage because that's how you build trust, especially when you're increasing rates double digits. I happen to be the face of the first double-digit rate increase. I happen to be the face of our $500 million budget. Last year, our budget was $330 million. We're at $500 million. We also had the firestorms, or we had windstorms, but it came with fire to 2 adjacent cities. We did not see that, but we had 80-mile-per-hour winds. We had hurricane-like winds. I can't climb a power pole. What can I do? I could go there, visit the people, work 7 days a week, be there 24/7, like my team is, to cheer them on, to provide direction, to okay the spending. And that's what I'm there for, and I think that's why I was hired, because they knew tough times are coming. I'm going to be honest, I don't know if we're going to meet our renewable portfolio standard. I will not deal with developers that change their price midway through. So I've been very honest. If you do that, I will never do a deal with you. And I'd rather go to the state and ask for forgiveness. So it's a different approach to keeping costs down. I'm also looking at small modular reactors. So that's a small nuclear resource, the first in California to come out with that. We're partnering with other entities in Pacific Northwest and Utah, but we're the first ones. And being innovative means I have to be out there to tell the story. And I am out there probably a little too much because I don't sleep that much, but I am very energetic, and I do plan to take some time off. But when I take time off, I'll probably still be talking to customers. But I think that's how you build trust and maintain trust.
Awesome. If there's a stereotype of someone being a strong leader because they don't have meetings like that, they don't need people to tell them what to do, they just do it, I would argue that Mandeep's approach is stronger, right? It's stronger to go face your customers, have a conversation with them, than sit back in the office and send a memo out about why the rates went up and maybe not even sign it yourself. So I love that. So John, question for you on the American manufacturing side of what you're doing. So I do a lot of work in cybersecurity. My friend Emma Stewart at the Idaho National Lab just worked with DOE to come out with a amazing paper about cybersecurity vulnerabilities in batteries. It's kind of frightening, right? I don't want to overstate it, but there's a lot of crazy stuff. There's a lot of code that's never been seen by anyone, even from the national security space, in battery installations from around the world. Is there a cybersecurity benefit, and what are the other benefits of the way you guys are doing manufacturing?
Yeah, we find that, again, almost a corollary to automotive industry. In the early 2000s, everyone was actually required to offshore. Like General Motors had purchasing procurement programs that required like minimum 10% had to go to China. And even when manufacturers, tool and die shops in the Midwest were saying, but wait a minute, we can actually equal the cost. Just let us have a chance. And it was no consideration given. And then that didn't bode well. Ultimately, GM went bankrupt in 2008. And so it shows that you can't have like blind obedience to certain initiatives, you know. And what we found is we're iron, salt, and water. We have plentiful, all of those in the United States, and why not leverage that? And then we also have, flow batteries have these like plastic half cell, like channels of fluid. Again, there's incredible molding expertise in America and all states in the country. There's also support for the petroleum industry because we use plastic resin pellets in our molding, and preferably recycling type. We're trying to have that ethos and be authentic with the brand. And so we find like everything is here, and it actually doesn't make a whole lot of sense to transport those kinds of goods. And so we have, opportunities and, business we're pursuing in Australia. They have their own iron mines that they would like to leverage. We have tons in the United States, obviously, and then to a lesser degree opportunities, those same minerals in Europe. And so, coming from a bit of a Toyota lean background, they also leverage, they always start from a central plant shipping globally, and then when the economics warrant, then you trigger a regional manufacturing strategy. And so, it seems like that will make the most sense when you look at the total installed cost. And again, kind of reinvigorating the manufacturing base, letting people know you can have a solid middle-class life by engaging in manufacturing, in mining, and transformation of certain plastics and metals into useful product. And last but not least, I think where we're lacking quite a bit is on the circuit board and the power electronics side. We have a lot of innovation and engineering going on here, but tons of outsourcing to Taiwan and other countries. And I think it would be great, for America to get those skill sets back and those manufacturing lines back at the electronic level, and then have the embedded security that you're talking about for the grid.
Awesome. Thank you, John. I'm going to go to Mike for our last question of the panel here. So you talked a lot about innovation and the culture and what NRECA is doing. Can you give us an example of a time when either with your utility or NRECA where people stepped beyond the status quo and it benefited members, it worked out?
Yeah, great question. We've talked for a long time about an all-the-above approach. All the above on our energy portfolio, but also an all-the-above approach to everything we do, like Brian was talking about in our culture, how we look at workforce, how we look at consumer engagement, how we look at safety. That all-the-above approach must permeate throughout our culture. And so one of the things that, as America's Electric Cooperatives, one of the things that we saw a few years ago, and our members were coming to us, was that, you know what, we want the same thing they've got in the city. And back in the 30s, that was electricity. But in the 2000s, that's been high-speed internet, fiber to the home. And so America's Electric Cooperatives, along with our federal dollars, were able to rise to the occasion, take advantage of those dollars, and push out high-speed internet all across rural America. Thank goodness we did. For many of us, that started right before COVID. You think about the folks in rural America that were having to go into town to sit at McDonald's for kids to do their homework, or if they were sent home from work and didn't have access to high-speed internet to be able to do their work. We actually at our office set up, took our community rooms, divided them up into cubicles, and let folks come that were working from home, and Chattanooga's the largest city close to us, where they could come in a safe space, hook to our internet service, and be able to work. And I think that's a perfect example of who we are as America's Electric Cooperatives, that we try to find solutions. We take a lot of pride in being a solutions provider on a number of scopes. But I think that's just one of the greatest examples I can think of in my career, where we really stepped up, saw the need, put our money where our mouth is, and have really made a transitional impact to the landscape of this country.
So before I thank the panel, I want to say a thank you to Jason Rodriguez, who is a mild-mannered guy for someone that's convened this type of activity and type of function. When I joined the industry in 2014. I started my career in high tech and had done a bunch of cool, interesting stuff like online retail in the 90s and energy trading in the 2000s and so on. And I was excited because when I got to electric power in 2014, I read the news and I was like, these people are all about innovation, right? It's all changing. Got into utility and found not so much. That's on the outside. I thought, oh, I'm coming from the future, they're gonna like me. No, it was like a barbarian got over the gate, get him, right? And I really was asking myself, did I make a mistake? These people are crazy. And I went to ETS, and it really helped me to say, I'm not making a mistake. There are people in this industry that really want to do this. This is a great conference. It brings together great leaders like this. I don't know many that have speakers like this, but it's a support group. It's a team, right? So what I would encourage you to do is both thank Jason and his team for putting this together, but when you think about next year, bring one or two folks with you, maybe from your utility, maybe somewhere else, somebody who needs that shot in the arm to say the future is possible, it can really be done, and we're maybe we're the people to do it. With that, let's thank our panel and give them a round of applause.
Thank you so much, Don. It's an amazing panel.